Hello, everyone. This was a good week of chapters with different reveals, some victories, and some new plot developments. So we'll be starting off with One Piece chapter 1066, and this was a good chapter showing quite a bit of different information. There were a lot of reveals in this one, from Robin's backstory being more or less completed to what Dr. Vegapunk actually looks like. So the majority of the chapter is us learning from Shaka that the Oharan people were able to save the knowledge they had accrued, and that he knew what their theories were. And after Robin's hesitancy to answer his questions, she finally relents and confirms that they had theorized what he had theorized, and the government destroyed them for it. Thus, for Shaka confirming the theory, he then informs her that he went there, Dr. Vegapunk, before he had separated himself, to pay homage to Professor Clover and the rest of the Oharan people, and he saw the whole place. It was devastating, and there he saw the Great Lake that they kept throwing books into, and the books had remained intact, explaining that if the world government soldiers were smarter, they would have known that this was the real prize to get rid of if they wanted to stop any knowledge from being taken. To his surprise, he saw giants taking the books from the water, and after talking with Dragon, who had also been there to pay respects to Professor Clover, was told that the giants knew of the importance of them, and it is revealed that Saul survived the events of the Buster Call and lived long enough to tell the giant pirates, I guess, who were traveling by, or made it home, whatever, to grab the books and save the Oharan legacy. Robin gets very tearful from all of this, remembering both the pain of it and then the joy that Saul had survived, and that then Shaka has one more thing to show them. It then cuts to Luffy's group, still looking for a way to try and activate the dormant machines, and ultimately nothing worked until the real Dr. Vegapunk did something where he got stuck in between dimensions, it seems. So then Luffy saves them. Vegapunk recognizes both Luffy and Bonnie before they mess with their boots and their jet boots as well. So a lot of interesting things going on here in many different scenarios. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter an A. I thought the different reveals and the information being displayed here was very good, from Robin getting some closure on Ohara, as well as seeing that her people, their legacy lives on, and that they did not die in vain thanks to Vegapunk. To the controversy of Saul still being alive, we actually don't know if he is still alive. The event was 22 years ago, and he might have only lived long enough to get the library up and running, and then ultimately did not survive his wounds. Now, I'm a big proponent that death isn't always the answer for consequences. So, for example, Saul fought back and lost to Aokiji. Ultimately, it seems as though it worsened his condition, and he was in bandages even still when Vegapunk visited the giant's land to talk to Saul and look at the library. So the attack did a number on him that is still permanently affecting him. These are still consequences, and the fact that he was dead for 22 years in Robin's eyes is still a real thing. But I know people don't like that One Piece doesn't kill characters, so we'll have to see. I think it was a nice decision to have Saul still survive the events. Whether he's still alive or not remains to be seen, but he at least survived there to at least make sure the Oharans won, full stop. We'll have to see what happens next. It might have just been a nice cameo that she got some closure for. Seeing Dr. Vegapunk as well, he's a goofy design looking like a big giant-headed Einstein, which feels like One Piece. It's right up the alley. I think it's almost the reason why Oda decided to split up Vegapunk into several different people. So you got a couple of them that are what people wanted in terms of a more streamlined design-wise, and then you get the goofy one that we all knew was coming. So it'll be interesting to see what Luffy's group with the real Vegapunk get up to, if he explains to the two of them what's really going on and how things are about to get very crazy, how to save Kuma or something, who knows. But there's going to be some intriguing stuff in the next few chapters, which makes the next few chapters extremely extremely exciting, simply for the fact that we'll get two different accounts of information from the various Vegapunks, and we still don't know when CP0 is going to arrive to make things infinitely more dangerous. So now we're on to Mission Yozakura Family, chapter 154, and this was a good chapter showing the continued fight and ultimate victory, for now, of the Yozakura family, as Shion and Nanao were able to beat, or at least immobilize, Futaba, thanks to Shion analyzing her memories on how to hug Futaba like their mother used to stop her from flailing around and throwing everyone. Shion was able to pull this off, and she is physically on the boat, thus leading to what I had feared, where Momo is going to take two of the children and expand his forces to 4, and now things are going to go from bad to worse. But for now, Futaba has been immobilized, and Shinzo is also immobilized outside of the ship, mind you, with Kengo and Teo. Now it is up to the eldest brother to defeat Momo and put an end to this whole thing. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but that is for the next chapter to show me whether I'm right or wrong. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing relatively how outclassed Nanao was against Futaba, with Shion's help in securing the perfect route to win was basically the entire thing, because I don't think either of them would have won without that ability to stop her. Now, of course, if they all do get back together and just get to hang out, you know that Shion's gonna pull off that hug whenever they need Nanao to stop, and it'll be rather funny to see. Or maybe Shion will have to teach the main female character how to do that move to stop Futaba. But what I still see on the horizon is tragedy in the next few chapters, as Momo is going to take more of the siblings and more or less beat down the eldest brother, even with his blossoming, showing just how powerful Momo is, especially given his bizarre conviction. So it'll be interesting to see what the next chapter holds, whether I'm right and things are going to go from good to bad very quickly, a win turning into a loss in a matter of one chapter, or the fight will be prolonged and eventually maybe Momo has to retreat, thus having to go back to square one, where then everyone's home. We get 5 chapters of them hanging out, and then Momo makes his move again. We will see. But for now, the victory stands, as the Yozakura family have succeeded in their task of saving their siblings. So now we're on to Undead Unluck, chapter 135, and this was a good chapter, showing Fuko going around collecting more team members for Nico, as Nico does agree to build her machines, and she transports them to his new lab. He then asks for a lot of equipment, which costs a lot of money and other things, and it is revealed that Fuko made quite a bit of money off of her knowledge and the knowledge of artifacts to gobble up natural resource rich lands, so she is a very rich woman. I thought that was hysterical that she said, I'm going to go back into the 1800s, I'm going to get really rich off of this, and just cuts him a $25 billion check like it's nothing. It's so funny. I wonder if that's what Juiz did to secure a lot of her power as well, because she didn't seem to worry about like real world stuff like everyone else. I wonder if Fuko's doing the same thing, where she's just mega rich and doesn't worry about real world stuff just because she outsmarted everyone. That's awesome. But yes, so Fuko is mega rich and is able to help Nico fund his experiments and his technology, so it's up to Fuko to get him a team. She does so and seemingly brings everyone that was in the last loop, at least from some of the character designs, they looked like the ones from the last loop, and so they're getting ready to build the orbs that Nico used in the last loop at the height of his powers to, I guess, help him or help others, I'm not sure. Fuko then saves Unsleep, the woman that falls in love with Nico, and Nico falls in love with her and brings her back, and they start bickering like they did in the previous loop as well. Fuko thinks she'd messed up, but lo and behold, we know this is exactly how it went, and eventually they'll still probably fall into the same things that happened in the previous one. So they're getting ready to leave to go find Gina as they travel to Russia and to the same location, as it seems as though it's already begun, and it's up to them to have to rush to stop Gina's awakening before it happens and kills everyone. So the next chapter should be pretty tense to see if they can save the day, as Fuko has already now done it a few times to save people from their tragedy, as we find out that Unsleep's tragedy was she passed out from not being able to sleep and fell onto train tracks while a train was coming. Someone jumped down to save her, but ultimately he did not survive getting hit by the train. Now Fuko arrives to save both of them, so no tragedy happens while her power awakens. So that was rather nice, just to see that she has now saved two that we have seen of these negators. So now next week we should see how she is able to pull off the miracle of saving Gina, if she's able to. So now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 132, and this was a good chapter as we continue to see the back and forth between Doom and Ryo. We see that Ryo continues to power up and continues to give problems to Doom as they continue to battle, and eventually Ryo, thinking he has the upper hand, uses his second, which blinds pretty much everyone within the vicinity except for him, and he begins to attack, believing wholeheartedly that Doom will not be able to react. Little does he know, however, that Doom does react, deflecting one of his shots towards Finn, which Ryo has to jump in front of to take the shot instead of Finn, who would have probably died. Doom, then realizing that he accidentally hid this quote-unquote weakness, reveals that he is blind and was never given the power of sight. Thus, Ryo's attack did not work in the slightest. If anything, it only hampered his allies. So now the fight is a little bit more interesting, as Doom plans to now full-on use as much might as he can to attack and go on the offensive for once. With Ryo injured, this will probably happen, but Ryo, being the pseudo-protagonist character that he is at this point, the strongest of the visionaries, will somehow also bounce back, continuing his ability to push his magic ever higher in increasingly desperate situations. So it should be interesting to see how this battle concludes, though I don't think it'll conclude for a little while yet. We also see that Melodol has returned to help push the key to save Mash, so it should be a little faster now, especially with four of them pushing the key, and it'll be interesting to see when Mash arrives to save the day. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the continued back and forth, as this is probably the closest match between a Divine Visionary and a Child of Innocent Zero, seeing as how Ryo was having the upper hand, but he couldn't quite finish off Doom, and now with the injury, Doom has his opening that he's needed. Doom even said that Ryo had no openings, so he was looking for one pretty desperately. Now with the injury, it'll slow him down, and Doom will most likely be able to really push offensively, with Ryo having to react defensively. So the next few chapters should be the continuation of this battle, with little updates on Mash, and eventually the probable victory of Ryo, which will then pave the way for Innocent Zero to take care of everyone, and for Mash to come in before everyone dies to save the day. So now we're on to Sakamoto Days chapter 95, and this was a good chapter, having it that the grandson continues to fight everyone, as the grandfather understands that his grandson is forced to see his father, and so the battle is desperate as they're trying to figure out a way to unbrainwash the grandson, but Shin cannot figure out how to do that. Eventually, the masochist starts to make his move on the janitor to take him out, and Shin saves him while also trying to figure out a way to incapacitate the grandson. We then see the invisible guy take his opportunity to fight against the hypnotist, and seemingly goes okay for a few minutes as Shin is able to use some of his ability in the way that the teacher was able to teach him, and takes the grandson down before the grandfather, the janitor, is able to remind him that their memories are the same, and tells him to look back into his memories to what his father was like when he was younger. And then we see a kinder father character that did seemingly care. He was relatively cold, but in a similar way to Sakamoto, Sakamoto, but did seemingly care for his son, and the one memory that is seemingly always there, the one of him with his weapon over the bloody remains of his wife, telling his son not to remember this. This causes the grandson to break out of the hypnotism, seeing his grandfather and coming back to reality, when the masochist had already beaten the invisible guy and planned to re-hypnotize the grandson when the grandson cuts off his hand. This now leads to no hypnotism, as there is no clapping ability with only one hand, and eventually Shin is able to land his devastating right hand punch and seemingly knocks him unconscious, maybe even killing him. So we have a victory here. Much to my surprise, I didn't think they would just outright win, but the masochist guy was playing around too much, so it could be seen that way. It was also 3-on-1, and even then they had to really luck out that he then got a little too distracted that his hypnotism wasn't going to work anymore as his hand was cut off. So overall, I think I'll give this chapter a B. It was good seeing the victory, as surprising as it was, of our group of characters here, where Sakamoto is still off fighting the director tooth and nail. I imagine they'll be coming back into this story rather thunderously, as they'll probably break through a wall and land in that area, where we will then see that the masochist is taken out, and the director has to realize either to escape because he cannot win against everyone, or he might kill the janitor and surprise just about everyone, because he seemingly is very much the strongest person in this entire place, even considering Sakamoto in his current state anyway. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, as well as if we get a more full backstory on the grandfather, his son, and his grandson, and learn what the secret is that Slur wants no one to know. So some interesting bits of information here, as well as a nice conclusion to the battle. So that was all of the chapters. It was a good week overall, with many different reveals of information, such as One Piece and Mashle revealing very different things, and victories in Mission Yozakura family and Sakamoto Days, with the only real outlier of not fitting the theme, quote unquote, is Undead Unluck, as they're just beginning their rescue mission of another former ally. So now we're on to everything else, and Jujutsu Kaisen was fine. Blue Box was fine. Elusive Samurai was good, as we see the main character retreat from the battlefield and to assess his men, and finds out that one of his vassals, the two swordsmen Glutton, was once trained at a academy and facility that is owned by the main antagonist of the series, and is ashamed of it and did not want to reveal it to his liege. And so the main character tests his loyalty and confirms to him that he still believes in his vassal, his retainer, and now believes also in him in finding a way to boost morale, as that is what they need, because the horse-headed guy is going nuts, as he seemingly goes into a pit stop like NASCAR and changes horses when one horse is too injured. It's ridiculous, but it also works for this ridiculous series. P times 6 was good, as we get to see the main quote-unquote villain at this point, the charismatic sibling, play his song, but plays it instead of into a festival or a carnival as he always does. He plays it as a train, just like Lucky did, and allows everyone to go home and to experience this magical moment of the last night of them at college, thus one-upping Lucky and winning them the contest, and making Lucky lose, while Lucky's probably at his lowest mentally. So it'll be very interesting to see how this affects Lucky, as that's sort of the main driving point of this series, is how will this affect Lucky and the rest of his siblings, I guess, as this move here will be probably devastating for the majority of them, as I wonder how many actually show up for their mom's death, and or if even their father shows up or something and he is the only one who didn't. It'll be interesting to see what the next few chapters hold here, as the contest is over, and I imagine hopefully this series does continue and just doesn't end here, and we get to see the continued growth of Lucky and how he adapts to this situation and other situations like it. So it'll be very interesting. Tokyo Demon Bride was good. It had its fight and we got to see different shenanigans happen, and the plot moved forward, revealing that both the main female and male leads are being tracked and are targets of major quote-unquote villains, and other of the main female characters class, this uber class of supernatural beings. So the next few chapters should be very interesting, as again the main character in a joking sense continues to grow his harem. It should be pretty interesting how this one continues to play out, because it's a fun series. Ginka and Luna was also good, as we find out that the villain of this arc is a rival of Ginka, and more or less they hang out, Ginka and Luna, with all three of them, the villain-esque character and his two disciples, and they more or less bond to a degree. They get a letter of introduction to go to the guild, but they are told to be cautious because there are two major foils who do not want to see Ginka return, and they, with their many disciples, will be a major thorn in their side, wanting to kill them on sight. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens within the next few chapters, as things will probably get very ridiculous. I also do wonder what happened to the other two characters that were left at the base of the mountain. I hope they bring it up if they are still around. So that was all of the chapters. It was a good week of chapters, despite no Black Clover and no My Hero, but next week should be pretty fun, as everything should once again be back. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.